Our next guest needs no introduction, Mr. Piyush Goyal. Thank you, sir, for being a part of ET GBS. You're in charge of a big part of the economy, and I'm sure the biggest disruption is now COVID, coronavirus. You've had a long meeting with the Prime Minister as well. Can I begin by asking you about the preparations of India and COVID?
No, I was discussing my railway issues. I think we have other things in life. Of course, the health ministry has taken very serious precautions. The whole country is becoming more and more conscious. I'm told Israel has even started a movement to do namaste instead of shaking hands. Maybe a good lesson for some of us in this room here today. But in terms of the economy, I think we are in fairly good shape. All the numbers do not reflect any immediate cause of concern. A lot of things are getting back to normal worldwide. India generally is quite insulated. Our interdependency is still much lesser than other parts of the world. So I think we are on a relatively strong wicket in India.
So you're not seeing this as too big a threat, too big a disruption, if I were to read between the lines in what you're saying?
Well, we'll have to continue to monitor and watch the situation, obviously. But I don't think any of us in this room has so far felt the impact in terms of a disruption. To my mind, the resilience of Indian business and industry is amongst the highest anywhere in the world. And Indian ingenuity also comes into play at such times. So I'm not personally as much concerned as some people are making it out to be. I think we all need to keep ourselves abreast with whatever is happening in the world. Focus more on our precautions that we should take, especially in terms of large gatherings. I have also decided that I will not be participating in any holy celebrations this year. And I think if all of us keep these basic precautions of good hygiene and sanitation in mind and care, and the health consciousness that has been brought into play in the last 5 or 6 years is now, in a way, evident that people are recognizing. I still remember when Prime Minister Modi first launched the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and announced from the ramparts of the Red Fort in August 2014 on Independence Day that the nation should focus on making India clean India. I'm not commenting on any particular paper or group, but a lot of criticism was made that should the Prime Minister of the country in his first inaugural address at from the Red Fort be talking about a subject as small and simple as a clean India. I hope all those naysayers and critics of that time recognize the visionary Prime Minister who couldn't foresee the COVID as such, but who could see that sanitation and clean India has huge dimensions on not only the health of the nation, but even the health of the economy. So I'm glad that today we have a nation where there's so much more consciousness about cleanliness, which is going to hold us in good stead during the next few months.
Do you think numbers are lower versus many other countries because of Swachh Bharat?
Everything adds up. There's never a one issue that determines everything. And I think this is an important element. Because at the end of the day, when we talk to the doctors or the health practitioners, this morning also we had the program where I had personally gone to Safdarjung Hospital. And we had the address by the Honorable Prime Minister and interaction with all the Jan Aushadhi stores. The Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Pariyojana, the Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana, under which we are giving low cost, very affordable generic medicines to the poor, or for that matter to every citizen of India, so that healthcare costs can be brought down and made more affordable for every citizen. During the course of that interaction, I was talking to the doctors, to the sisters there, and realized what a huge impact Ayushman Bharat has had on the common man. What a huge impact the availability of low-cost medicines have had on the common man. The director of Safdarjung Hospital mentioned that there's usually a line outside the Jan Aushadhi store of patients wanting to get affordable medicines from there. Now, all of these are steps taken over the last 5 years, which are in some sense like the unsung heroes, the unsung contributions to make India a better place to live in, to make sure that healthcare is available to all at affordable prices. In fact, while we are at that, I may take a minute to make an appeal to such a eminent gathering of personalities here, and I'm actually quite amazed. It speaks about the power of Economic Times that on a late Saturday afternoon, with an extended weekend ahead of us, you have a room full of such eminent personalities.
They've come to hear
volumes.
you speak, sir.
I don't know about that, but it speaks volumes of the power of the Economic Times. Compliments to all of you.
Round of applause.
But I want to make an appeal to each one of you. The Honorable Prime Minister always had a vision that just like we took toilets to every home in the country and made India an ODF, open defecation free society, just like we've been able to almost take cooking gas to every home in the country, barely a few homes left now, maybe 10, 12 million, 20 million homes left. Just like we've been able to take financial inclusion all over. One very, very important aspect that he's focusing on is the availability of sanitary pads for sanitary hygiene, sanitary napkins that large number of poor women, particularly in rural India, are not able to afford. Frankly, it's not rural, it's even in urban areas where we find people are not able to afford the very expensive sanitary napkins. I would urge all of you, particularly the ladies in the room, all the youngsters in the room, to take this as a mission. And can we all collectively work to see how we can make sure that sanitary napkins are made available to every woman in this country in the next 12 months. And these Jan Aushadhi stores are providing sanitary napkins at 1 rupee per napkin. Only 1 rupee per napkin. So you're really talking of a cost of 7-8 rupees. I think that's truly made the product affordable, truly made the product available across the country. And I do wish Economic Times or the Times Group could consider making this a mission, making this something which we will all propagate through industry associations, through our readers and viewers of our television channels, through digital and social media, and see if collectively as a nation, we can ensure that no woman ever is deprived of a sanitary napkin. That, I think, would be a huge contribution to the country.
And of course, tomorrow is International Women's Day, so a day before that to learn about that is, of course, fantastic. But Mr. Goyal, if I could come back to you as the Commerce Minister. Now, you've had these studies come out that maybe travel would be affected by up to $113 billion globally this year. Obviously, commerce is going to be impacted. How are you navigating your way through it? You said that ingenuity of India will also have to stand out. So if you could shed some light on that.
Well, obviously, the Commerce Ministry is in continuous dialogue with all the stakeholders, both those who are involved in domestic industry and those who are involved in the international trade. I think over the last 40 days or so, we've been assessing sector by sector and engaging with industry to see what the situation is. Looking at where we as a responsible nation can play a role to contribute to any global gaps in the supply chain. So wherever we have our strengths, whether we can contribute to make sure that global supply chains are not disrupted, wherever we need any inputs in our supply chain, looking at alternate sources. So it's a collective effort that all the export promotion councils, industry associations, government, and various stakeholders are working on. We are monitoring the trade data also every month. We have data up to February, and February data does not as yet show any signs of concern. In fact, both our imports and exports have gone up slightly in February. So by and large, it's a situation that's a very large health concern. But on trade matters, as a responsible government and as a responsible ministry, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry is certainly keeping a very, very watchful eye, engaging with all stakeholders very regularly. We are available. We are just a phone call away from anybody who has any issues. And I would urge you to ensure that all economic participants in the country, and ET has the power both through your digital, your print and your electronic media to pass the word across the length and breadth of the country that the Modi government, which has always been a listening government, is ready to engage with any and everybody across the country at any point of time, 24 hours a day.
But with the world and the world factories obviously being so overhedged towards China, is this also not the time, sir, for the Modi government to be in overdrive to attract some of those manufacturers here, set up new factories, increase their India exposure?
Well, I think in the times of a medical emergency, that is not really the focus of a nation which is a responsible global player, global country. Our bigger focus is to ensure that normalcy returns quickly, to ensure that a country with 1.3 billion people, such a large nation with deep density, high density of population, our bigger focus is to ensure that we sensitize our population to preventive health care. Yeah. But as I said earlier, as a responsible nation, we also believe we have to contribute to the global effort.
Yes, step up for the global economy.
To contribute to the global economy wherever there are gaps and encourage our Indian industry to be a responsible global participant.
We've had a very successful visit by POTUS, President Donald Trump, who has said later on in the year there is going to be a trade deal. Some of the irritants have been worked out. Mr. Goyal, can you shed some light on that? Any timeline on the trade deal? What we can expect on the trade deal?
I should actually carry a recording machine and just play it out every time I'm asked this question. But as most of you might be aware that trade negotiations are very complex affairs. I've been in this job only 9 months, so it's relatively new to me. But in this 9 months, what I've learned is they never do a trade deal like they were done in the 2009, 10, 11 period. It's not as if I'm just politicizing the issue. It's not as if I'm trying to pass on some problem to the past. But the reality is, this country and our domestic industry and business has been completely let down in the trade deals or the trade agreements that have been entered into by the country over several years. In fact, if it was not for Prime Minister Modi's very decisive leadership and very clear thinking, any other government would have possibly also signed the RCEP agreement and threatened Indian domestic industry to no end. And I can't even tell you the sigh of relief across the country and the kind of congratulatory messages we got in every sector, every stakeholder in the economy. The day 4th of November, India decided not to sign RCEP. It would have literally been the last nail on India's domestic manufacturing capabilities and competitiveness. Similarly, any other negotiations, and actually negotiations with the US are to India's advantage. Because a country which has a trade we have a trade surplus with, it opens up more opportunity for our exports in a big way. Sure. So I think these are complex negotiations. These are not to be discussed in public until the last contours are finalized, because they have a potential to jeopardize fair play and discussions. But I can assure you, and through you, all the people of India, that this government will always engage and negotiate what is for the best interests of the country. Every negotiation will always have a give and take. A negotiation is successful only when it's a win-win on both sides. But we have to ensure that that win-win is truly something that our Indian industry, our Indian people can benefit with, what are the areas where we need engagement in terms of innovation, R&D, better technologies coming into play. And those are the areas we are focusing on. And I can assure you that negotiations are in a very, very friendly, extremely positive approach. It was I who, in fact, first promoted that we should not look at only the short-term thing. We should look at a larger engagement with, certainly with a country like the United States, which is the world's largest economy, which has huge imports from all over the world, and where we have huge potential for many of our products, like textiles, like gem and jewelry, like chemicals, medicine, pharmaceutical. The potential is humongous. And I believe that the discussions that we are having and the huge relationship that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump share with each other, the bonhomie, the trust that both of them share, will hold us in good stead in our negotiations.
I also want to tell you the Prime Minister, when he was here yesterday, commended railways for not just safety, but for being on time, and said, unlike the airlines who don't do anything for the customers, the railways have started giving refunds if a train is late. I don't think many of us in the room knew about that. Was that your brainchild?
Well, I was just now sharing with your colleagues before I came into the room my own experience about punctuality. And while it may be a slightly couple of minutes taken out of the program, but I'd like to share with you this experience because I want you to reflect on the thinking of the Modi government. It's not something which is a run-of-the-mill thinking. It's a creative way to address problems. We all knew that there was a punctuality problem in the railways. Yeah. Trains were late at times for 4 hours, 6 hours, coming from Lucknow or Bihar, UP, Bihar were even late as much as 8, 10, 12 hours. But what the Modi government does is we don't try to solve the problem just by giving a letter or writing an instruction. Yeah. We did a deep root cause analysis. Like a good doctor, we first wanted to analyze the problem, and you'll be amazed. The first problem was that the data itself was not correct. The data of punctuality. The data was what was written down by the station master, reported at every level. There was never a focus on long delays or the number of minutes that the delay is there. A 15, 30-minute delay was just considered on time. It was not even considered as a delay. So whereas the government data and the railway data showed trains to be almost 85-90% punctual in most regions, the passengers were always inconvenienced and were cribbing. So I was quite amazed that where is the disconnect? So we got down to a root cause analysis, looked at every issue. I just explained to your colleagues. I won't give you all the details here for respect of time. But simple thing like putting an electronic device at 42 locations, wherever there was an interchange in the train system, we were able to actually get exact data. And now, of course, we've expanded it much more. With that, we started addressing the causes of delays. We focused on all the long delayed trains. Now there's no train which is delayed 8 hours, 6 hours. Almost 4 hours and above delays are eliminated. And we are gradually bringing it down to ensure that we can look at really high levels of punctuality despite so many uncertainties in the country that even an elephant crossing a railway track can actually cause a disruption in train services for an hour or two, and then it has a domino effect down the line. An elephants in Assam, a group of herd of elephants in Assam crossing the railway track, stopping traffic both sides, would have a domino effect extending up to Correct. Tripura or even up to Delhi or Mumbai. That's the level of interdependencies, and your subject of collaborate to create really is something the railways is day in and day out working with. We have to collaborate in the whole 70,000 kilometer network, otherwise we'll never be able to run it.
In fact, I think that's a cue for the airlines to learn a thing or two. And Mr. Goyal, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for being a part of the ET GBS.
Thank you very much.